You're listening to a production of the National Media Archive. To learn more or volunteer, go to nationalmediaarchive.com.
Let's start with a question. How can a country as wealthy as the United States have tens of thousands sleeping on its streets every night? The homelessness crisis is hitting record levels, especially in a handful of city centers like Los Angeles, San Francisco, and New York. Cities are pouring billions into solutions, but the tents keep multiplying. Why does each new program seem to fail? And if so much money is being spent, where is it all going? Today, we're pulling back the curtain on America's homelessness epidemic, unpacking the numbers and exposing the broken systems behind the headlines. Now, you might be thinking, surely all this public spending must be helping? But let me tell you a story. Los Angeles alone boosted its annual homelessness budget from $63 million in 2015 to $881 million in 2022, a 1,300% increase. Yet, the homeless population grew by 56% in the same period. It's not just a moral dilemma, it's a logistical nightmare. We'll explore the concrete reasons why the situation keeps getting worse, despite all the good intentions and taxpayer dollars. Stick with me as we untangle the web of public agencies, private contractors, and nonprofit organizations that make up what's now called the homeless industrial complex. By the end, you'll see how the politics, economics, and market forces collide to make homelessness not just a tragedy, but also, strangely, a business. So, what is the homeless industrial complex? Picture this: multi-million-dollar contracts, consulting fees, and a growing list of private companies and nonprofits lining up for a piece of the action. Every year, new programs launch with fanfare, and every year, more people end up on the streets. A technical term you'll hear a lot is service provider. These are organizations paid by the government to deliver shelter, food, or support. But here's the kicker. There's little incentive for them to actually solve the problem long term. If homelessness disappeared, so would their contracts. Now you might be asking, are these organizations evil or just stuck in a broken system? Most workers make below average wages, and many really care. The real problem lies in the incentives and structures that keep the wheel spinning. Let me put it another way. Imagine a car mechanic paid by the hour, not by the job. Would you expect your car to get fixed quickly? That's the heart of the conflict. Here billions of dollars flow, yet little changes for those most in need. Let's dig deeper into the management maze. In Los Angeles, the Homeless Services Authority, or LAHSOX, as the middleman between federal, state, and city funds and over 100 nonprofit partners. Their job? Design programs, distribute money, and assess results. But here's the technical snag: administrative overhead. This is the cost to keep the system running, and in LAHS's case, over $40 million a year goes just to administration. They have more than 750 employees, yet run only a few programs directly. Now, suppose you try to book a hotel room for a homeless family. You'd need the help of 10 different organizations, plus police, hotel staff, and oversight teams. That's not efficiency, that's chaos. You might be wondering, why not just combine efforts under one roof? But with so many specialized agencies, everyone's protecting their turf, fighting for funding, and reporting up through different channels. The result? Endless finger-pointing and, ultimately, confusion over who's actually accountable for getting people off the streets. Let's talk numbers. How much does it cost to house one homeless person? In LA's Inside Safe program, the answer was staggering: $177,000 per person per year. That's more than 3 times the national median salary. The program, designed to get people into hotel rooms while seeking permanent housing, spent $250 million in a single year to serve just 463 people. That's not a typo. Here's a technical term: cost per unit. When you see apartments for the homeless built at $739,000 each, it's not hard to wonder, couldn't that money go farther? Now, you might think, why not just hand out checks? It's a fair question, but as we'll see, the problem isn't just financial. It's also about how the services are structured and delivered. But before we jump to conclusions, let's look at why these costs are so high and why the outcomes are so poor. One big reason for inefficiency is what's called siloing. Imagine a relay race where every runner is blindfolded and the baton keeps getting dropped. That's what happens when outreach, shelters, support services, and housing are each run by different agencies. Technical term alert: case management. Ideally, a single case manager would guide someone through all the services they need. In reality, with so many disconnected nonprofits, there's no clear point of contact. Here's a story. Booking a simple hotel room required 10 agencies plus police and oversight. No one could say who was responsible for what, leading to endless "that wasn't my job" responses. Now, you might be thinking, isn't more help better? But in practice, overlapping roles and no direct communication lead to wasted resources and missed opportunities. Until these silos are broken down, every dollar spent risks getting lost in the shuffle instead of reaching those who need it most. Let's peel back another layer: the role of nonprofits. Even though they're mission-driven, nonprofits also want to survive, and that means protecting their slice of the funding pie. Here's a technical term: turf wars. This happens when different organizations compete for contracts and influence, rather than collaborating. Each group wants to justify its existence, even if that means duplicating efforts. You might be wondering, aren't nonprofits supposed to work together? In theory, yes, but in reality, job security and funding streams make cooperation tricky. Let me tell you about Tim Campbell, a public auditor who found that confusion over roles led to constant disputes and a lack of accountability. Until the incentives change, nonprofits, no matter how well-intentioned, will end up serving the system as much as the people they're supposed to help. Have you heard of Housing First? It's a policy that says the best way to end homelessness is to give people a house first, no strings attached then, offer support services like addiction treatment later. The technical term here is wraparound services. Ideally, these support housing by addressing mental health, substance use, and job skills. But many programs are voluntary, and participants can cherry-pick what they accept. Now you might be thinking, doesn't this make sense? The problem, when services aren't integrated, people may refuse help, leaving the root causes of homelessness unaddressed. Sometimes these housing units become centers of concentrated problems, not solutions. Take Kevin Dolan, a former social worker, who described how, without mandatory participation in support services, housing projects became magnets for the very issues they were meant to solve. The lesson? Providing shelter is just one piece of the puzzle. Without coordinated, required support, we risk just moving the problem indoors. Let's shift to the root cause: the cost of housing. In cities like San Francisco and Los Angeles, real estate is so expensive that even well-paid professionals struggle to afford a home. Technical term: affordable housing. It means units priced so that low-income residents can pay rent without spending more than 30% of their income. But in these cities, the market rates are sky high. A University of California study found that most people became homeless simply after losing their income. It wasn't about addiction or mental health for the majority. And shockingly, a subsidy of just $300 a month could have kept most from losing their housing. Now, you might ask, why not just provide that subsidy? The irony is, these small interventions are often drowned out by expensive construction projects or bureaucratic hurdles. Until housing becomes more affordable or subsidies are better targeted, the crisis will keep growing no matter how many shelters we build. Politics adds another layer of complexity. Homelessness has become a political football, tossed between parties and used to score quick points rather than long-term solutions. The technical term here is policy fragmentation, when different government agencies or levels of government pursue separate, sometimes conflicting strategies. You might hear claims like, people are moving to California for the benefits, but studies show 90% of California's homeless were already living there before losing their homes. Why all the finger pointing? For politicians, piling on new programs or blaming rivals is easier than addressing root cause, especially when so many jobs depend on the status quo. So while the public demands solutions, political incentives often keep the problem unsolved and the spending levels high. Here's a paradox few talk about. The homeless response system is a major employer. Every nonprofit, government agency, and contractor creates jobs. A more efficient solution might help more people, but it would also mean layoffs. This is called the make-work effect, when systems persist because they provide employment, not because they deliver results. Maybe you're asking, isn't job creation good? Sure, but not if it comes at the expense of actually addressing homelessness. I know it sounds cynical, but politicians are reluctant to overhaul systems that keep so many people employed, even if it means less help for the homeless. To really solve homelessness, we'll need to rethink incentives, so that funding rewards success, not just activity. So, what's the way forward? First, we need to streamline and unify services, breaking down silos so that help is seamless and accountable. Second, shift incentives reward organizations for getting people stably housed, not just for providing temporary shelter. Technical terms to remember: performance-based funding, tying money to measurable results, and systems integration, making sure agencies work together, not at cross purposes. We also need to focus on prevention. That means targeted subsidies before people lose housing, not just expensive interventions afterward. Of course, there are no quick fixes. Housing markets, political incentives, and system inertia are powerful forces. But understanding how money really works in this system is the first step to real change. Thanks for tuning in, and remember, real solutions require both compassion and accountability. Let's keep learning, keep questioning, and keep pushing for a system that truly works for everyone.